Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Kuf Yud Gimel. We are at the two dots near the top of Kuf Yud Gimel. Let me share my screen and we will get started. So here we go. Getting used to the new setup that Zoom has in the update that I just got. Okay, so we're picking up at the two dots on the sixth line of Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. We've got one more piece from the Mishnah on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph to analyze. So the Mishnah mentioned how an employee may swear and collect if he has witnesses that he asked for the Gemara asked for the money. So the Gemara is going to clarify what this is talking about. So again, the language of our Mishnah was im yesh edim shetavu, if he has witnesses that he made such a claim, should harez and nishba v'notel, then he does get to swear and collect. Again, what we had said just before this is that if he makes a claim on time, meaning when it's due, then and says that he, excuse me, I'm going to have to sneeze. And then says he's going that he hasn't been paid, even though the employer says that he has paid. So then the employee can swear and collect. But if in fact he doesn't make the claim against the employer until after the money is due, excuse me, then because he claimed late, we're going to not allow the employee to just swear and collect. We're going to make him bring evidence. We're going to say, Hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. However, we then said in our statement at the moment that if there were witnesses that he demanded from his wage from the employer, well, then he can swear and collect. So the Gemara asked, "Katva'o l'kaman." I don't understand. Why should he need to bring witnesses? He is making a claim in front of us, the court. So what are we talking about here? And so the Gemara clarifies, Amar Rabbi Asi shitva'o bismano. The point is that he is now coming to the court after the money was due. And so now that so we're now going to he's going to have witnesses testify that the claim that he made was when it was due. So the Gemara asks, "V'dilma lebasar hachi para." Well, 1 second. If afterwards he made a claim, if he made the claim, let's say the money was due on, here you go, take this. Let's say the money was due on Tuesday, and he made the claim on Tuesday, and now he's in front of the court on Thursday. How do we know that the boss didn't pay him on Wednesday? So that's the Gemara's question.
Oh, wow.
So Vidilma Labasar Hachipar, maybe they paid him after he made the demand, but before he came to court. So Amar Abaye clarifies the situation and says, yes, you better believe it. We're going to have Rashi in about 2 seconds. Shitva'o kolzmano, that he made a claim throughout the time. So what does that mean? Let's take a look at Rashi. Kol zmano, end of the third line at the top of Rashi on Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Second, and then continuing on the last wide line. Kol zmano ad she'avar alav. So until it became late, he was claiming. So it was all of that time. So ula olam, does he, and now the Gemara asks, well, does that mean that he always will have the right to make this claim? This is, we're going to read it again like Rashi does, that he always has the right. So again, I'm going to be Mark's employer. Mark comes to me on Tuesday and says, listen, it's due. The amount of money that you owe me is due. So I say, okay, well, listen, maybe I'll pay you later. And then he comes to court on Thursday, or Friday, or let's say he comes to court in 3 weeks from now or 3 years from now. Is that original claim that he made on Tuesday sufficient that he can just swear and take from me? Because maybe I've paid in the interim, even for after a long time. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Chama bar Ukva, Keneged Oso Hayom Shel Tvia. And Rashi tells us, take a look at Rashi. Actually, we can even do the question of Rashi. Ula Olam, it's the last of the wide lines in Rashi. Bidmia, this is a question. Ubishvil shetavu kol hayom velo nasan, that he claimed all day on Tuesday and I didn't give it. Yehi schir zed, this worker, neman lo olam, will he believe forever? Lomar lo hiskabalti, that he never received it. Ve'imrotza balabayis. And if I, the employer, want lishava, that he'll swear, and even if I want to swear, lo ne'emin, I will not be believed. V'chikol kach hisha sakir scharo. Are we that concerned about ensuring that a worker gets paid? The answer is presumably not. So Amar Rabbi Chama bar Ukva, continuing on in Rashi, Keneged kol hayom shel tvia. Yom echad la'achar zmano natnu lo chachamim l'shava v'yitol. That Mark, given that Mark made the claim against me and said that I owed him the money all day on Tuesday, well, you tell me, how much do you think I owe you? $100. Okay. So you came to me on Tuesday and I said I'll pay you later, I'll pay you later, I'll pay you later. Now you go to court on Wednesday and you say, I didn't get my money. Then one day that you have until the next day to go to court and say, I didn't pay. And if you go to court the next day, then you can swear, I swear that I didn't get paid, and then I would have to pay you. Okay. So that is the rule. Now, having discussed all of that, we are now going to transition to a different topic in the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is going to talk about security for a loan. That if I lend you money, sometimes you could give me some level of security. It could be real property, it could be movable property, collateral. Exactly. Excellent. So we're now going to be talking about, as we'll see in a moment, because based on the first Rashi in the Mishnah, we're going to be talking about where no collateral was taken originally, but I borrowed $1,000 from Stan, and I said I would pay him on Wednesday. Comes Wednesday, and I don't pay him. So now Stan has the right to go to court and insist that I provide him with collateral. He doesn't have the right to necessarily seize it, as we'll see. He doesn't have the right to go into my home. And we're going to deal with that issue right now. But that's what we're going to talk about right now. Hamal ve'es chaveros. We pick up with the Mishnah on Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. If one lends some money to his friend, and Rashi says, Hamal ve'es chavero v'higia zman v'lo paralo, and the time has come to pay, and he hasn't paid him. Okay, so lo yimashkenu ela b'veistin. The only way that Stan's allowed to get collateral from me is by going to court. And even after you go to court, you don't have the right to go into my house to take it yourself. Because we actually have a verse in the Torah that says that if you're going to collect collateral, you don't have the right to come into my house. Shneamar bachutz tamot. The Chumash says specifically, the pasuk is in Dvarim Perakav Daled pasuk Yud Aleph, that you need to stand outside of my home while I'm getting the collateral for you. Hayulo shnei chelim. What if? Sorry, I don't have a second. If there are two, what if you, in order for you to cover. So it's $1,000 that I borrowed from you. You want collateral worth $1,000. So let's say I don't have anything that's necessarily worth $1,000, but I have two things that together are worth $1,000. Okay, so hayulo shnei chelim. I have 2 vessels that you're going to take as collateral. Notel echad umeniach echad. That you can, it can work out that you take one and you leave one. Why? Umachzir es hakar balayla, because you got to return my pillow at night. And my plow bayom, and you have to return my plow in the daytime. Meaning that the time of when I need that item, assuming I only have one of it, or I only have one for myself, then you need to give it back to me so that I have it. I have the opportunity.
Making a living.
It can't prevent me from making a living, and you can't prevent me from having a good night's sleep. The imes, if God forbid the borrower dies, so ein machzir liyorship. Now you're still holding that collateral. You don't have to return it to the heirs, because that collateral is your way of ensuring that you get paid. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel goes further. It's not only when the debtor dies that you don't have to pay. Avla atzmo eino machzer ela ad shloshim yom. You only have to return if you collected collateral from me because I failed to pay you on time, I have 30 days to make good. And if I don't make good, then you have the right to actually go ahead and sell. Now, we will then have a sale process that would be a public process. You don't just get to like take it and keep it. We have to sell it because maybe it's worth more. And so we end up going through a sale process, and we don't go through a fire sale process. We go through an ordinary sale process. So that is and mochram bevestin. And so then once you have 30 days, then mochram bevestin, you could sell it in court in order to make sure, and exactly, sell it through the court. So, all right, so that's the Mishnah on Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. This is the Mishnah that highlights the right of collateral. Collateral, by the way,
a lot of that pertains today.
Correct, 100%. When I took secured transactions in law school, my professor said that to his knowledge, the earliest reference to collateral in the world is in our Torah, is in the Torah, is in the Bible. So very interesting that that something that is still very relevant today is dates back to then. All right, so Amar Shmuel, Shliach. So now Shmuel is going to make a statement, and we are then going to challenge it 4 times, concluding that the statement is actually subject to a debate among Tanaim. So let's take a look. What's the statement? The statement is relating to the fact that Stan, as the creditor, is not allowed to go into my house to take my collateral. And we can understand why. Because let's say I'm going to give him my table as collateral. Well, he might come into my son and say, well, you have a really nice break front. I like the break front better, or I like your computer better. I like this better. The point is we agreed to a particular piece of collateral without him entering my house, and that's the deal. So he can't just come into my house and see whatever he wants. So Amar Shmuel, not only can Stan not go in, Shliach Beistin Mintach Netuche Ein, Aval Mishkrune Lo. The agent of the court can seize things. Now, what in the world does that mean? Let's take a look at Rashi. V'shliach Beistin Mintach Netuche Avhu Eino Rishai Likanes Lebeito. Even the agent of the court is not allowed to go into the debtor's home, ulamashkano, in order to take a collateral. Ella ru'ua bashuk. He has to see him in the market. Uminatek davar she'oches biyado mimenu, and then he can seize what he's got. So obviously, by the way, I can invite you in as but I'm not allowed to. You're not allowed to force your way and insist on your ability to go in. All right.
This seems to assume that whatever is collateral is portable and goes out of the house.
Correct. Right now we're talking about in general movable property because this is not sort of classic collateral. It's collateral because I have failed to pay in a timely
Yeah,
manner,
but something like your table,
right?
the table's not, you know, you have to carry around your table on the shook.
That is true. That is true. I would not tend to carry them unless I was trying to sell it or something.
Right,
But yes,
right.
but that's exactly right. I mean, because but we can imagine a lot of different things. But you know, even the table, if I were to try to sell the table or pawn the table in order to try and get money, maybe not even because I want to pay him back, maybe just for living expenses, you know, then that would be the way to do it. And that point is that once the court approves it, you have authorization to seize it, the assets, anywhere outside the house.
Is that how it works now, that when they seize a car, they can seize it off the street, but they seize other?
No,
property?
usually if when the sheriff has authorization, it will also include authorization to enter a premises.
But in terms of like, there's like licensed people who can do it? Doesn't seem like
It
anybody,
has to
huh?
be sheriff.
No, I think that, I mean, I don't know about deputization of the sheriff, but the sheriff is usually the
There's
one
repo
who's
guys
responsible.
who tow cars.
Oh, yeah, so the repo guys, I'm sure it has to be public. I don't think that they have the authorization to go into
Like
somebody's
the
property.
Sheriff
Yeah,
only. I thought.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
after they post something.
but it's a
that's
good question. I
illegal.
don't know. I don't know
They
that
have to post-
that law so well. All right, so okay. So now we're going to try. So again, Shmuel's statement is not only can the creditor not go into the debtor's house, but even the court's agent can't go in. But now we're going to cite our Mishnah in a couple of times. And then again, we're going to have 4 efforts to try and say maybe Shmuel's wrong. Vatanan hamalva eschavero lo mashkenenu ela bevestin. You can only take security through court. Miklal to bevestin mamashkin. That actually Bastin does have the right to seize a mashkon from the person's home. So Amar Lach Shmuel Ema lo yinatechenu ela bevestin. No, don't use the word yimashkenenu. Yimashkenenu, which implies seizing security from the person's home. Rather, say it's talking about seizing some kind of security while the person is outside of his home. Haninami mistabra. And this actually may make more sense if we look at our Mishnah, the Katani Seif, because our end of our Mishnah says, Lo yikanes lebeito li tomashkano. He's not allowed to go into the house in order to take his security. So Mani, who is this referring to? Ilema Balchov. If you tell me that we're talking about the lender, Mirejish Mamina, we could actually maybe learn that from the beginning of our Mishnah, because it says that you're not allowed to take security except through court. Elalav shliach bestin. So it must be that it's talking about shliach bestin. Must be the messenger of bestin that's also not allowed to go into the person's home. So the Gemara says, nah, that's not really a good proof, because imishum if you were going to try and prove it from that, low area, that's not really an issue, because hagi kamar. This is what the Mishnah may be saying. Hamalva eschaveiro. If I lend some money to, or if I'm the one who's borrowing, so if the Stan lends me money, lo yimishkenenu. He's not allowed to go into my home to seize property except through court. That implies that the court does take security by going into my home. And when it comes to the lender, you're not the lender isn't even allowed to seize my property in the street. And actually the Bach here adds the word gzeira. Gzeira shelo yikanes lebeito lito moshkano. In order, and the reason that we're not going to let Stan take my property even outside of my home is because we're worried that if we allow creditors to seize property even outside my home, he may come to try and seize it from within my home. So that was challenge number 1. Unsuccessful. We then tried to turn around the challenge to make it into a proof for Shmuel, but we weren't successful in that either. So Masiv Rav Yosef.
So
Rav
what's the battle?
so we haven't decided yet. We're working on it. And the question is can the court agent go into your house to seize your property? That's the question. if you owe money. So Maziv Rav Yosef says the following. Let's take a look at the psukim themselves. Lo yachavol rechaim v'rachav. You're not allowed to take a lower millstone or an upper millstone as a security. Hadvar macherim chavol. That implies that you can take other kinds of property. So lo sachavol beged almana. You can't take the garment of a widow as security. Hashel acherim tachavol. That implies that the garment of a non-widow you would be allowed to take as security. So man, who are we talking about? Inema balchov. If we're talking about the lender, haksiv lo savo el beiso la'avod avoto. Clearly, the lender's not allowed to go in to take these items because he's not allowed to go into the guy's house at all. El lav shliach beistin. So the answer is we must be talking about the court's agent. And what is it that we are saying? We're saying the court's agent can't go in to take certain items. He can't take the millstones. He can't take the clothing from a widow. But everything else, he can go into your house and take. Doesn't that contradict Shmuel? So
this is where the deposit's not identified in the document.
Well, correct, because when the court says you are now authorized to get security, it doesn't know necessarily what assets the debtor has. So it is an authorization to seize assets up to a certain value, up to the value that he's owed.
There's something specifically mentioned in the loan document, only that item.
Correct. An element that we're talking about here is where there was no security until after the payment was due. So I borrowed the money from Stan. Stan trusted me. I failed to pay on time. Now Stan has the right to go to court and insist on a collateral. And that collateral is used to pay the loan with a set process for the payment. Now, the Tanakama said that you basically have to wait. He has to continue to wait, and I still owe him the money, but he doesn't get to necessarily sell my property immediately. But Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnah said a process that we've seen elsewhere during our learning together, which was first you seize the property for 30 days, then it goes into a sale process through the court. And during that entire time that it's going through the sale process, I can try and find the money and pay him back and stop the sale process. But if it goes all the way through the process, so then that sale process will ensure that Stan gets paid. So that's the question. The question is that it seems like we have verses in the Torah that can't be referring to the creditor going into the person's house, because we already know the creditor can't go into the house for anything. So it must be that that we're talking about the court's agent going into the house, and it's just these few items that he can't collect, but he's allowed to go into the house. But that contradicts Shmuel. So Shmuel would say, Targama Rav Papa Breda Rav Nachman Kamei de Rav Yosef. So Rav Papa, the son of Rav Nachman, may have said this in front of Yosef. V'amrile Rav Papa Breda Rav Yosef Kamei de Rav Yosef. Or it was Rav Papa, who's Rav Yosef's son, said it in front of Yosef. And he said the following, La'olam bevalcho. Really, we're talking about the lender. And why does the Torah also tell us, once it told us that you can't go in to get anything, why did it tell us you can't go in to get these specific items? And that if, in fact, the lender were to go in and take these items, he has not only violated the prohibition about going into the creditor's to the debtor's home, but he's also violated the prohibition against taking the millstone or the garment of a widow. Okay, so again, effort number 2 came from the psukim. Still, also no luck.
Balco can grab anything he wants besides the item.
That's according to the interpretation that Shmuel would have. It would be a violation of the again. It's talking about the Baal Chov, and it's to add an additional prohibition. So the Baal Chov is not allowed to take anything. Not allowed to go into the person's house to take anything. If he takes anything, he violates one.
He sees outside the home.
Anything that he sees outside the home, it depends on, we're not speaking, those psukim do not tell us the law in speaking
Outside.
about outside the home. They are only talking about speaking inside the home, and they are only prohibitions. So we can't necessarily tell whether something that is a different topic would be prohibited or permitted in a particular context. All we know is that these prohibit someone from going in to take the millstone or the garment of a widow. And so so according to the simple read, the answer is that it's talking about the court agent, and the court agent is allowed to go into the house. But Shmuel says the court agent's not allowed to go into the house, so he has to reread these psukim, and he says, no, these psukim are adding an extra prohibition on everybody, essentially, but also on the creditor. And so as a result, no one's allowed to go into the house. And if you do go into the house and you take one of these things, the millstone or the garment, you have violated two prohibitions, not just one. So effort number 3, Tashma. What about the following brisa? Doesn't it contradict Shmuel? Mimashma shenemar bachutz tamod. From the fact that the Torah says that you have to stand outside, and again, this is a pasuk in Dvarim, Perek Kavdaled pasuk Yud Aleph. Einu yodeya shahaish asher ata noshebo yotzi. The rest of that pasuk says, let's take a look at the words of the pasuk, right? It says, bachutz tamod, va'ish asher ata noshebo yotzi elecha es ha'avod hachutza, right? And the person against whom you are claiming, he will take out the collateral from his house. So, why do we need to say ha'ish? Isn't it clear that who's going to go in? I'm not allowed to go in. It must be the debtor. It must be the debtor who's going in. So the Gemara. So why did it say et ha'ish? Why does the Torah tell us v'ha'ish? L'rabo shliach beis din. It comes to include the messenger of court. So that's a little cryptic. So we're now going to try to understand it, because it's not clear which way to interpret that the ish must include the agent of the court. Our initial read is that the ish who's allowed to go into the house to take out the collateral must include the agent of the court. My lav shliach beis din kilove. Doesn't this show that the agent of the court is just like the debtor, the borrower, and allowed to go into the house? No, the Gemara answers, lo, as we turn to Kuf Yud Gimel Amabet, lo, shliach beis din kamalda. No, that drasha, according to Shmuel, is teaching the exact opposite. It's teaching that the court's agent is exactly like the creditor, like the lender. He's not allowed to go into the house. Okay, so that effort also failed. But now we've got another brisa that is even clearer and is going to lead us to say that there's a machlokas among Tanaim. So Tashma, im chabol tachbol b'salmas reach, you shall take the garment from your fellow as security. So we said that when we're talking about that's talking about a garment for nighttime, and you have to return it to him before the sun sets. Based on a custom adaber. So the Brisa tells us that this is talking about that agent of the court. Oh, how do you know? How do you know that it's talking about the agent of the court and not the lender himself? Because it says elsewhere in the Torah that the lender is not allowed to go into the house to take out his security. So Harei Baal Chova Amur, we already know that the lender is not allowed to go in. So ani mekayem im chavol tachbol salmas reyacha. So therefore, how do I apply if you take the garment of your fellow as security? It must be talking about the agent of the court. So what is the agent of the court allowed to do? He's allowed to go into your house to take the garment. That disagrees with Shmuel. Shmuel says the agent's not allowed to go into your house. And this brisa is pretty darn clear.
Could we be taking it from him in the street?
So the answer is that the
Those are Rashi's first read.
what do you mean by Rashi's first read?
The Rashi you read it, so you can only take it from him in the street.
No. But that is.
We could be talking about the Baal Chov here. He took something.
Yeah. All right. I hear. I hear. I mean, clearly the Gemara is understanding it as referring to in the house, and we're going to have an even clearer brisa in a moment. So I'm going to pause that, put that question to the side for the moment. So the Gemara answers Tanaihi, Tanya, because we have another brisa, Shliach based in Shabala Mashkano, that if you have the agent of the court come in to take money from the borrower, Lo Yikanes Lebeito Lamashkano. He's not allowed to go into the home. Ella Ome Mibachutz. Rather, he has to stand outside. Vahala Motzi Lo Mashkon. And the other one goes into the house, meaning the creditor, the debtor, the borrower, has to go into his own home and bring it out, even for the agent of the court. Shene'amar bachutz tamod veha'ish. So we see, because it references veha'ish, not only are you, is Stan, the lender, required to stay outside, but James, the court's agent, also must stand outside my home, and I bring my things out to him. V'tanya idach, and we have another brisa that again contradicts Shmuel, and this is even clearer. So Baal Chov sheba lamashkano lo yikanes lebeito lamashkano. A lender who comes to take a security, he's not allowed to go into the borrower's house. Ella omeid bachutz. Rather, he has to stand outside. Vahala. And the other person, namely the borrower, he can bring it out to him. Shene'amar bachutz tamod. Ushliach based in. What about the agent of the court, Shabala Mashkano, who's coming to take security? He'll take security, and he can go into the house and take the security. But he's not allowed to take as security things that are necessary for the preparation of food. So as a result, that's what we're talking about. So that is extraordinarily clearly not like Shmuel. And so as a result, even though maybe you could try to touch up that other brisa, we can now say that brisa could go in either direction. And so even if you were to say, why didn't we answer that? The point is that we have another brisa that's even clearer to that. So now that brisa continues. I know, something, but that's there's a famous line, right? That something when you've lost something, you always find it in the last place you check, right? Because of course, after you find it, you're not going to check any other places. But the point is that the Gemara structures itself so that it's always in the last place you check, and that it will try to check all of the other places that you might have found it in order to help us understand why it's specifically that place where you found it. All right. Anyway, I'm not sure that was a perfect analogy, but I liked it. All right. But nosin mita umita umatza la'ashir. Now, when you have, there's an obligation here to leave certain other items. We said that you can't take things that are prepared for food, but there's more than that you're not allowed to take as collateral. And specifically, the lender needs to give the borrower a bed, and a bed with a spread, if the person is a rich person, and a umita umapats la'ani, and a bed with a mat for a poor person. Now, we're going to explain lo avalo leishto, and he has to do this for the debtor, but not for the debtor's wife, and not for the debtor's children either. Just as And the way we make this assessment for a borrower, kach masadrin ba'arachin, that's how we make an assessment when it comes to arachin. If somebody makes a commitment to give their full value to the Beit HaMikdash, so what is it that they're allowed to retain? It's this same analysis.
So it's one bed for the entire family.
Basically, correct. So klape laya, 1 second. That seems to be reverse logic because ikar sidur ba'arachin ksiv, the main source of in the Torah for evaluating what gets left with a person is done in the psukim in arachin at the end of Sefer Vayikra. So ella ema. So rather, you should say it like this: kederach shemasadrin ba'arachin kach masadrin b'balchov. That just as we make an assessment in the case of arachin, that's how we make the assessment with respect to a borrower. All right, so now I am sure you're wondering what's this story with the 2 beds, right? There's a bed and then the bed with some kind of spread. So or a bed with a mat, exactly. So Amar Mar. So no saying mita umita umatza la'ashir. Umita umapats la'ani. So you had to give these 2 beds to either a wealthy person or a poor person. So Laman, who's the second bed for? If you want to tell me it's for the children, ha'amrat lo avalo leishto levanav levanosav. It says that this bed that he's allowed to keep is for him and not for his wife or his children. So it's got to be both for him. So tartalamali, why does he need 2? So chada de achila v'chada de zagala. So one's to eat at, and the second is to sleep at. Kiddush Shmuel. And the reason is like Shmuel makes the following point to Amar Shmuel, kol mili yadana asusaihu. I know how to fix everything. Meaning Shmuel, as we saw earlier in this Masechet, was a phenomenal doctor. And he knew how to take good care of everybody. And but he never got smicha, which is why his name is Shmuel and not Rav Shmuel. So Lubar Mahani Tlas, but I don't know how to heal these 3 things. Man de'achal ahina marira aliba rekana. If they eat some bitter dates on an empty stomach, or uman de'asar misna dechisna retiva achartze, or if you bind damp flax rope around your hips, umanda, and of course the one that's relevant to us, umanda achal nahama velo maski arbe garmide. If you eat bread and you don't walk 4 amos, meaning that it's important after you eat to get up and to walk around and not just fall asleep at the table. And so as a result, it is precisely for this purpose that we have given the debtor 2 beds, one to eat at and one to make sure that he gets up and goes over to another bed to where he's going to sleep. So
why not leave him a table?
What? Because they didn't.
They did. The Gemara shows they did have tables. In fact, they said they removed the table. Right? People had their own separate tables, and then when they finished eating, they would actually remove the table.
That is true. But you also, I mean, the answer is that the table doesn't seem to be directly related to the person's to the debtor's health. And if you watch the old movies of Roman times, right? They didn't always have a table. They would they'd be laying back and having the grapes. Maybe they'd be dropping the grapes on them. But in any event, I don't have a great answer, but I think the best answer that I can offer is that it seems like the table wasn't necessary for the health purposes, and so as a result, it's tough luck. If we're gonna just make sure that you stay alive.
But we also said a minute ago that it's anything related to eating, right? That they
you can't take anything that's so that's a good question.
To the table that people eat at a table.
Yeah, maybe you don't need to say a table for that reason. That absolutely, that's an excellent answer. That maybe the reason that they didn't have to say a table is because the table is considered for Ochel Nefesh. Now I don't know that for sure, but that would be another possible explanation. So we can go.
That's why they would leave the table, right? Because
yes, that would be a reason to leave the table. Correct. Okay, so Tana kamei de Rav Nachman. So this was taught in front of Rav Nachman that kedero shemisadrin ba'archin kak misadrin b'valcho. That just as we make an assessment when it comes to archin, so we make an assessment when it comes to a balchov, somebody who owes money. Okay, so now apologies for not scrolling. So now Amar Lei, Rav Nachman asked the question: Hashta zabuni mezabdinan lei, sadurim mesadrin lei? I don't understand, because we're going to see, and Rashi explains it nicely here. So if we take a look at Rashi, Rashi's 3, 6, 9, 12, from the bottom, 15, 18, 19, about 20 lines up in the narrow lines of Rashi. It's opposite the 8th line of the wide lines in the Gemara. Zavuni mezabnin le la'achar shloshim yom av kelim hatzrikim lo keditnan mishloshim ulahalan mochran. We saw that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that after 30 days you can sell everything. So you're going to be able to sell all these things. So why in the world are we making any kind of assessment at all? Because the things that we're taking are going to be sold. So that's the question that Rav Nachman asks.
So you have to have some kind of estimate in order to know how much you're taking.
I'm sorry. No. The assessment that we're doing is what is necessary for the guy's life, right? And so why are we doing any kind of assessment? Because at the end of the day, because the idea is that presumably we're taking the item from him and we're going to be giving it back to him when he needs it. But also when he needs it. Right, but here we may end up after 30 days. We're gonna sell it, and so why is there a need to figure out the assessment? And it seems at the end of the day we don't really care about the guy's situation. Okay, because we're going to end up selling the item rather than continuing to give it back. So, umi mizabdin. 1 second. How do you know that we're allowed to sell it? In fact, doesn't our Mishnah say that you're not allowed to sell it and you have to give the pillow back at night and the plow during the day? So, Tana Karab Shimon ben Gamliel, Tana Kamei. No, it was taught when it was taught in front of Rav Nachman. It was taught with the position of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, namely that we do get to sell it. V'hagi kamarlei, and this is what Rav Nachman said back. Hashta Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. If according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, zabunim is abninale, that we're going to end up selling the item that we're taking as security, sadurim misadrinale. Do we have to make any kind of assessment about what we need to leave for him? Ditanan Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer afla atzmo einu machzer ela ad shloshim yom. Even the things that we need to return to him, we only return to him for 30 days. From that point on, we sell them. So what kind of assessment is necessary? So now, of course, you could say that the assessment is necessary for the 30 days, that during the 30 days, he should have something to. So, umimai dechi ka'amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel zabune legamri ka'amar. 1 second. Maybe you'll tell me, you know what? When Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says that you sell it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you sell the entire item. Maybe he had a $5,000 pillow, and now, or $100 pillow, and so we'll sell the $100 pillow for $100, and we'll buy him a $10 pillow, and that way Stan will be able to collect his $90 of the amount that is owed. So Lagamri Kamar, or Dilma Haki Kamar. Maybe this is what Rabban Shimon Gamliel says. Until 30 days, we return the item as it is. We return what's appropriate for him in his based on his status. And we sell the excess that isn't necessary for him. But that doesn't work because if Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel actually believed that, really, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel would have said, you know what? Every Jew deserves everything. Because the Amar Abaye, because Abaye said the following. He referred to 4 different people. One of them is Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. He's the first one. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva, all 4 of these people, Kulu Svirulahu, Kol Yisrael b'nei Malachim, that all of Israel, all of us, we're all princes and princesses. And so as a result, if anything is based on what we deserve, we get everything. There's nothing that we don't deserve. We deserve the greatest possible thing. And so as a result, you wouldn't sell anything, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, because if we sold only up to what a person was able to deserve, there would be nothing to sell. And so how do we know that these four people say this position, that the Jewish people are like princes and princesses? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Ditanan, because we have the following Mishnah. There's a Mishnah in Masechah Shabbos, at the end of Masechah Shabbos, Daf Kuf Vav Amabet in Masechah Shabbos. Loas haluf v'loas hachardo. The Tanakama says you're not allowed to remove the luf and the mustard that are on a table at the end of the day. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel matir b'luf. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no, you can remove the luf that's on the table at the end of the after the meal. It's what? Luf is it's some kind of feed for ravens that we'll see in a moment. We'll see right now. Because it's food for ravens. Now, why does that matter? Because food for the only people who would raise ravens are princes and princesses. And so because it's not food, the ravens aren't edible, apparently. And so as a result, because this waste product has a purpose, we allow, and even though that purpose is only for princes, we allow every Jew to remove it from his table, because every Jew is a prince who could potentially have ravens. So Rabbi Shimon,
for what it's worth, Corin has a picture. It looks like a flower plant, and he says it's poisonous unless you cook it for a while.
Okay. So in that regard, I think it's similar to mustard, right? Isn't mustard also the same thing? All right. So Rabbi Shimon, how do we know about Rabbi Shimon? Because it says, D'Tanan, we've got another Mishnah. B'nei Melachim Sachen Shemen Verd Al Gabi Makoseihem B'Shabbos. That you're allowed to, princes are allowed to use some kind of rose oil on their wounds on Shabbos, Shekain Darkan L'Suk B'Chol, because they do it during the rest of the week. And so that's what the Tanakama says. And Rabbi Shimon says, Kol Yisrael B'nei Melachim, all of Israel are like princes. So again, that shows that they're allowed to do it, even if they're not necessarily like a prince. So Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva, how about Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva? At the time, we got a brisa that shows that they think that all of Israel's like princes. Harei shahayu noshin bo elef zuz. If there's a loan for 1,000 zuz, v'lavush itztala basmei mana, and the guy is wearing a coat worth 100 mana. 100 times 100 is 10,000, so he's worth 10,000 zuz. Mafshitin osami menu. The Tanakama says we take it off of him. We put him back into clothing that's fit for him. He can't get out of a debt by saying, "Listen, I'm sorry, but this diamond encrusted jacket is the only thing I own, and you can't leave me naked." No, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to sell that jacket, and we'll put you in something else. But V'tana Mishum Rabbi Yishmael, it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yishmael. V'tana Mishum Rabbi Akiva, and it was taught in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Kol Yisrael Ru'uyin La'osa Itztala. Every Jew is entitled to that kind of coat. We won't force him to sell it, because every Jew is a prince. So we got the question now. But according to what we thought originally, so that he needed to give what is suitable. And we sell what's not, what's beyond. We can understand how a pillow or a cover or some kind of clothing might fit into that category. There could be a difference. Is there really a difference between a high-class plow and a low-class plow? So Rava Barabba says, no, macharisha b'kaspa, you could have a silver plow. Now, that probably doesn't work so well. And as a result of plows not likely being out of silver, some people understand that the word macharisha in this entire Gemara has really referred to a special kind of skin comb that would rake, that would exfoliate yourself, and so that could be silver versus not, and that also actually would help address another issue, which is a macharisha might be considered something that's needed for food, and so if we say that it's referring to a comb for your skin, that's not a food-based item. All right, so
Shaul has a photo of a Roman device used to scrape oil. He says it's to scrape oil off of bathers, and he says that Rabbeinu Hananel the Aruch and Tosafot say that's what this is.
Correct. I mean, this is we don't have the time to go through the Tosafos in detail, but that's exactly right. That would be the item. I had it understood as a comb, but yes, it could be some kind of a scraper that one could use. Okay, so Maskiv lo Rav Chaga, very last question. So Rav Chaga has an objection. V'lei malei, and by the way, just to be clear, to what Rav Nachman ends up, the way we end up saying it is Rav Nachman's question and objection is never addressed. So what we end up saying is, yes, Rav Nachman, maybe you're right that we don't need to do an assessment according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. But that question is never addressed. I just want to highlight that. So Maskiv lo Rav Chaga.
But how do we determine how much the erechim, I would think, would be necessary in order to for the creditor to obtain the value of the money that he's owed? So you have to assess something, right?
Yeah. So where the assessment, it's excellent point to highlight. The assessment that we're talking about here is separate from the assessment of how much the value of the items are worth, to ensure that Stan gets to take collateral that's worth the amount of the loan that he made to me. So 100%, everybody agrees that kind of assessment is made. The question is what about the assessment made of the debtor to determine what, in fact, he absolutely needs for his life in order to determine what he gets back, what can be taken, what can't be taken. That's the assessment that we're referring to. Okay, so Maskiv lo Rav Chaga. Rav Chaga objects to this understanding. V'lei lav alai karamis. Why can't the borrower say, I don't have any obligation to support you? Stan can tell me, why should I suffer for the loan that I made to you?
I'm trying to buy a coat myself.
Yeah, I'm trying to buy a coat myself. Exactly. So Amar le Abaye explains as we turn to Kuf Yud Daled Amud Aleph, and with this we'll conclude. Ivra ale karami. Now, the truth is that the lender does have responsibility for the borrower. Mishum shenemar ulecha tiyet tzedakah. It will be for you treated as a charitable act, meaning that we each be based on the relationships that we have an obligation that actually comes on us to provide that kind of support. And so being in a particular place, in a particular context, can result in us actually having an obligation. Now, Ken asked the question about what kind of assessment we're talking about. That is the question that we will pick up with tomorrow. We mentioned the need to make an assessment regarding the needs of the borrower. What exactly does that involve? For the answer to that, stay tuned to tomorrow's talk. Very important point before I go. Tomorrow will be only online. We will not be meeting in person. I will try and remember to send a note to that effect to both the listserv and the WhatsApp. Chicago. That's where Rafi is from.
Right.
So have a great day, everybody. Be well.
David,
Yeah,
the Cubs are playing it.
the Cubs are playing. Okay, good to know.
Okay. Now,
Bye, everybody.
you missed